Welcome to everybody who is just getting in. We're going to ask you to go ahead and mute your microphones if you would, so that and you can mute your photo as well if you want, your screen, so that we don't get things too busy. Andy Craig, who is the Libertarian Pragmatist Caucus political director, and myself are joined tonight by Representative Marshall Burt, the first Libertarian elected to a state legislature as a Libertarian for what, 20 years or so? And so we're very happy to have Representative Burt here with us tonight. How you doing, Representative?
I'm doing very well, Laura. Thank you for the invite, and I want to thank everybody else that's joining us, both here in the room and across all the platforms, for joining us in.
Well, we're glad you're with us. Really excited about your race. How has you've been sworn in? Is about all right?
Yeah, that is correct. So on the 12th, just past week here, a week or so, we were actually be able to sit on the House floor and get sworn in as duly elected representatives for our districts.
And did they give you the nice nameplate and everything with your name on it?
Nameplate, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun. And so, what's been going on the last, since you were sworn in? Have things been put on hold, or you having committee meetings?
So we just finished committee meetings this past week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday here. We were just doing committee meetings, and that'll be for our upcoming session. We have an 8-day session planned starting the end of next week into the first week of February. So we're hearing roughly 3 to 5 bills from each committee. All personal bills are still being held until possibly March. So be a lot of behind the scenes, looking at different bills, seeing what's going on there, trying to get the research, making sure that all these bills that came out of the interim that were read at the House floor, put back in the committee, are bills that this particular committee wants to either hear or kill. And that's what we've been working on here just this past week.
And what committee or committees are you on, or are you sitting on?
So right now I'm currently on the Transportation, Highway, and Military Affairs Committee.
Are those all combined? Or
yes, ma'am. They all combined.
Okay. That's that's a lot more combined than a lot of committees. We have one big one in Nebraska, the Government, Veteran, and Military Affairs, but they all seem to sort of go together. Transportation isn't one that you would normally think is going along with the military, I guess, but maybe in Wyoming, huh?
Well, roughly have, I think about 45,000-ish veterans, I think it was the last number I got from our military department. So it's not a huge area that can receive its own committee. So instead of making committees bigger, they try to incorporate where we can get at the same business, but not, keep increasing stuff like that. So. And
have your committee hearings been primarily via Zoom? No personal meetings?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So, Andy, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of veterans, why don't we, kind of go back a little bit and just tell us a little bit about, who you are, how you got involved in the party, got recruited to run for this office and all the rest of it, and maybe a little bit about your district and where you're from. Well,
thank you, Andy. It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to keep it a little short here, so we don't take up the whole hour and just how I got here. I traveled the world as a Marine, different places in the world, different things that I've done, kind of opened my eye on how different governments and stuff like that worked. And at that time, I was actually within the Republican Party, and the way that we read things or we see things are completely different than the way that we interact and live with them when we're in different countries. So having the different unique experiences of humanitarian work or security work across the world started changing my mind on how things were really how we were taught here in the United States versus how they were actually applied in the real world. As the political world changed and the Republican Party, we saw under the last Bush administration how big government started pushing out big stimulus bill packages and bailouts for big corporations. I felt that the party as a whole really kind of lost its way. So I started making my move over towards and really that's really when I started looking into and made my move over to the Libertarian platform. Changed my registration, and I've been with the Libertarian Party for a number of years now. Never had I ever considered actually running for any level of government office. I enjoyed politics. I enjoyed how politics were supposed to work. Now how politics works today, I'm a little disgusted and kind of disturbed on how things happen. A lot of it behind the closed door. So I don't plan to go in as a one-man, force to be able to change everything like that. But the way that the founding fathers actually wrote in our Constitution and how the parliamentary process was supposed to work in order to do the people's business, that's really what I kind of fell in love with when it got into politics. Fast forward here, so we don't take up a lot of time. A couple years ago, Apollo Pizzell reached out to me through Facebook Messenger. I had thought it was a joke, and this is kind of an ongoing joke that I thought it was a joke, because it really didn't take me until I showed up to the first Libertarian Frontier Project Summit that I really kind of saw what he was building and the force behind the program and the project itself. And that's really when I kind of got on board and kind of, really decided to take the candidacy for my district, really to kind of heart, and started making a move from there.
Excellent. And I understand your day job, there's Union Pacific, right? That's what you do, railroad man?
Yes, sir. I'm a track inspector for the railroad. So I do work 60, 70 hours a week when I'm not legislating. And then when I get home from work, try to find a little bit of family time. It's been kind of difficult here just recently, but try to find a little bit of family time and then get back into bill reading or bill drafting, bill reviewing, and then try to get some legislative work done. So it's been extremely busy after November 3rd.
I bet.
So if you could tell us a little bit about your district, how many people you represent, what the geographic layout of it looks like, what the political layout of the district looks like.
So we look at roughly I think 10 to 15,000 voters. The numbers we had a new influx of registered voters this year. We don't know if that's indicative of new people moving in or if there were enough people that were disenfranchised with the whole political scheme up until our election. But we had a record-breaking number of new registrations the day of voting. So more and more people were actually in this. I think it was actually across the entire state, where we've had a lot more people get involved and actually want to get their voices heard. So that was really good on the public side of that. The district is partly, so my district actually breaks up between Green River, Wyoming, and Rock Springs. So I do have two different towns. Green River is a lot of Democrat county, and the Rock Springs falls more on the Republican kind of the county. So, fit in that middle, that between, we really had to get our message out there to where we were able to, speak to both parties and bring them on board.
Okay. Andy, did you have some questions you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Let's, I just kind of in general, you got up to the legislature, you've been dealing with your fellow representatives as the only libertarian there. How's that been like? How have they received you? Is this, a party they've never seen represented on the floor there before, or virtually on the floor?
Well, we were on the floor once. That was good. I think I took a lot of them by shock. I think the libertarian platform in itself, to either one side of the party or the other, seems very almost extreme. Trying to cut a lot of the government down. People aren't truly understanding how that's supposed to work. If there's no government there, what are we supposed to do, right? We don't have somebody to take care of us. So walking in, I think I was actually break a lot of the stereotypical thought process of who I was going to be and what I was going to do when I came in. So I think I was received fairly well from a large number of the representatives that were there, as well as some of the senators. Once they realized kind of where I'm at, I've been able to share and co-sponsor some bills back and forth between some of the representatives that were there before, some of the new ones, and then of course myself. So it kind of gives them an insight of kind of the direction I want to go. I think someone was waiting for me to come in and just try to close the government down with a bill and just try to push that, just go really, really crazy, try to get my name out there, and not doing so, and trying to rein in what we're doing. And the bills that we do have and we're looking at are very sensible, and they have a lot of good behind them. Takes a lot of burden off the people, and I think that kind of helped open up a lot of the eyes in there. So I would say I've got a really warm welcome from the representatives that I've talked to.
Do you find that that as a libertarian that you can sort of bridge a gap, that both Republicans and Democrats like you and reach out to you for different reasons? Back in my legislative days, I found that after I made the switch, that the Democrats talked to me a whole lot more, and the Republicans were looking at, they had to come to me and get my favor rather than expected.
Definitely. We're looking at a particular bill that we have that we're actually hoping to have tripartisan support. And, if we can get both Republicans and Democrats to sign on and have a 3-party bill go forward, I think that'll push our message huge, within the platform itself, but also letting the entire representatives know there that we are able to work on both sides of it, depending on what it is. I mean, if we got both parties are out there trying to support a tax increase, we're not going to get on board with that one. But if something that we can do to increase our freedoms and liberties and stuff like that, if it's that kind of a minded bill and stuff like that, we can definitely get on board. And I think that we can probably get some more of the parties to actually start working together a little bit more.
Excellent. So speaking of working across the aisle and different parties and stuff, Ned Bott asked a question through the chat that I thought was pretty good, which is, I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it. Do you caucus with either the Republicans or the Democrats in the state legislature? And if not, how does that work?
So no, thank you for the question, Ned. The way that the current bylaws are set up with the Republican caucus is, as long as I'm not a registered Republican, I am not allowed to caucus with them. They are able to make those rule changes, and they're able to change those within the bylaws. And I have spoken with the bylaws committee chairman on the Republican caucus, and it does sound like they may actually change those rules to allow me to enter in. We'll see how that will happen going forward. And then the Democrat side of it, how they have theirs is an actual open caucus, so anybody can show up and caucus with them. So they have a number of Democrats and then one independent that does caucus with them. So even though I haven't officially been invited into a particular caucus, the Republican Party does have kind of a little offshoot of about a dozen or so Republicans that are kind of working as a conservative caucus within the party itself. And I've had some pretty good chats back and forth with them. So kind of where we're leaning towards our bills and some of our support from within that party. Nice.
So speaking of bills, I know you've already kind of introduced and sponsored a few of them. So what's up with this? One of the things I noticed and had pointed out to me when I came to Wyoming before the election, your bridges and overpasses kind of out in the middle of nowhere have sculptures on them. What's that about? And what's your bill going to do about it?
If you've traveled through Wyoming and you see how flat and kind of plain our desert is, we'd like to kind of spruce things up a little bit. Actually, no, we have an art mandate that was put out in statute in 1991 that forces the state to purchase art with new state construction up to 1% of the new construction up to $100,000 per construction program or project. So when you have this huge bridge out there and it costs X amount of dollars and it meets that threshold, then the state by this statute is required to purchase art. That's where it comes from. So I do currently have an art mandate, art mandate repeal. So what it does is it repeals the requirement for the state to have to buy art. It doesn't remove the art. It doesn't prevent the state from buying art. It just changes the structure of forcing the state and allows the state to make a different determination. So when they do their bidding process for the project, if the money's not there for the art, then the art wouldn't be bought. So it would force the state to reevaluate how they do their bidding process. And some of the preliminary numbers we're looking at is roughly within the last 10 years, the state has spent $1.3 billion in new construction. So if you do the numbers at 1% of that, you can see where we can have a large amount of money being spent on art. And I'm not against art like anybody else, but there's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of nonprofits out there. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of money that are willing to donate for good causes. And I don't think it should be put on the backs of taxpayers. So that's where the bill is intended to go. And that's the whole purpose of it, is to remove the forced mandate of it.
There you go. So Faye Walker on Facebook Live has asked a question that got put in the chat by Alexander. She says, or Faye says, how do you balance your elected job and private job schedules? Now, you haven't had to be in Cheyenne much, right? So maybe talk about, you talked a little bit about what you've been doing during committee. How do you think this is going to work once you're in Cheyenne a little more?
Well, this is, thank you, Faye, for that question. This is kind of a little bit of a heartburn that I have with the way that the legislative leadership has kind of rolled out this whole session schedule this year. So normally it's a 40-day schedule. Once we go to Cheyenne to get sworn in, we stay there, and then we stay in session for 40 days until we're done. What that allows us to do is, for me personally, the job that I have is I could put a leave of absence in, and then my employer would remove me from the payroll, and then they could temporarily hire somebody to fill my position. Running an 8-day schedule that we have, it's not a long enough period to put in a leave of absence for the company. So basically what happens now is my company lets me leave. I'm still on their payroll. That they're not paying me, but I'm still on their payroll and their head count. So now what has to happen is the company now has to find somebody to kind of backfill and take my job responsibilities and put it on somebody else, making the company a little bit more shorthanded. So that'll happen in the end of January, February. But when March comes with a 30-day session, I will actually put a leave of absence in, and that'll open up that job for the company to hire somebody temporary in order to keep the workflow going. So as I said, it's been a little bit of heartburn on my side, and even though I've told the leadership about it, I don't think they've really listened to me.
Let me.
You there, Andy?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm here. I was just glancing through the chat. Well, I guess let's touch on one of your other bills that I know you announced, posted about on Facebook and put out there, which is something libertarians might particularly like, is reforming the order in which candidates appear on the ballot. As I understand it now, like a lot of states, it goes by a recent election result or something, and in Wyoming, the Republicans are at the top, and then the Democrats, and then Libertarians always last. and you have a bill to change that.
I do. Thank you. It's a good question. So we do have a ballot order bill out there. We just started to gain a little bit of traction with some support. This one's a little tougher. Basically, you look at the way that Wyoming is set up is the way that our races are set up for the ballot is whoever wins or whichever party wins the highest seat that we have, which would be at the federal level. So if the Republicans win the federal level, then every ballot that we have out there will put the Republican Party at the top of the ticket. And there have been a number of studies and cases and some research done that shows that just being at the top of the ticket, you could automatically receive a 5% bump in voting just because the name's at the top. So what this bill would actually do would randomize all the tickets and all the names. So, my name would be at the top, a percentage. Each party would have a randomized name and how it's set up. So, try to get in as a fairness and stuff like that. That's kind of the big thing there. Where it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sell this one would be, obviously, if you're at the top of the ticket, you wouldn't want to support a measure to reduce your benefit to get more votes. So it's going to be a little harder to get Republicans on board with this one. So that's going to kind of be our big fight. But if we're looking at it as a fairness bill and let them know that there is also a number of cases out there where a number of states have been sued because of it, because of unfair election practices and stuff like that. A lot of those cases have actually failed and cost the state a lot of money. So we can come at it to where we're trying to protect the state with any future lawsuits. And then actually, just like I said, when everybody talks about having a fair and balanced election, we'll see who's actually going to stand behind their word and see where it goes.
Representative Jim Turney, who is a former LNC chair from 25 years or so ago, is a city councilor in Florida. And he asks this question. He says, tell us about your staff assistants, paid, volunteer, assigned to you and hired by you. What do you have?
So we'll start, I don't really know how we start at the top, but the one person I talk to daily is my wife. She is she's my rock, even though I may not always get her involved with everything because a lot of times a lot of things slip my mind. She's there to kind of help make sure my schedule is set up, try to make sure I get my meetings set up in order and I'm where I'm supposed to be. I try to bounce ideas with her before I make a post and stuff like that. So she's actually my behind the scenes campaign manager. And I couldn't do what I do here, and I would never have considered running for office if I didn't have her there. And she's probably not happy, but I don't pay her for that. So she's kind of volunteered on that one. So huge kudos to her. She was never really into politics a whole lot. She kind of got thrown into this one. But I think she's enjoyed it up to this point, even as hectic as it is. So, and then with that, I do have a lot of support all the way from the top, from the LNC as a whole. I've talked to, obviously our chairman, Joe Bishop Henchman. He's been supportive all the way across the board from when I first got in and ran as a candidate, and then of course when I got elected. Nothing but support of everything we're trying to do. So of course the LNC's always been there, especially during the campaign itself. They were behind the scenes helping out with donations and stuff on the national level. Obviously we've had the Libertarian Frontier Project that was run by Apollo Pizzell. I would not be here sitting here talking to you as a representative if Apollo wasn't instrumental in what he's put together as a program and the vision he saw for my district and for me. I didn't actually go out looking for anybody or looking for anybody to pick up a campaign. Apollo sought me out, found me amongst all the people here, and had a good belief in me, and I thank him at the highest level. So I don't personally have a staff. I don't pay for anybody. There are people that are kind of volunteered in. I have someone who's on an internship that helped out through the campaign for his college, Mario. A lot of working people. Dennis Laughlin, I think Crystal Lefevre. They're both still in the meeting as well. They are our county chair and vice chair. They've had a huge impart, volunteering within the campaign, and then just getting the word out now as we go forward with the getting legislative news out there. So personally, I don't have a staff. When I get the bills run out, we try to use outside sources if we can, if we know we have those means, such as the Cato Institute, or I think Gloria helped me out with the Platt Institute and stuff like that. So we do have those think tanks out there that do help. But the bill process that we have as state legislators in the state of Wyoming, we don't have a personal staff. The LSO, which is our legislative support office, they actually do all of our bill drafting for all legislators as time comes through. So if I ever have an idea, I'll kind of run it by, Apollo and kind of our volunteer team and stuff like that, see if we get a good idea out there. And then I throw the idea to the LSO, and then they will actually draft the bill, and then it comes back. So we've been able to make really huge headway with very little staff costs. So thank you, Jim, for that question. I appreciate it.
That's great.
So when you were out campaigning and going to events and talking to people, what were the issues that the voters in your district were interested in, and how did they react to having a libertarian asking for their vote?
So we had we kind of had four key topics that really hit at the top. Education was really our first. And then our economic growth in the state, as well as jobs, were kind of equal. So we kind of put that together as one, and we were able to build a pillar off of that. And then our third one, or our fourth, but we made as our third, were gun control rights and stuff like that. So when we walked when the team walked door to door, we were trying to focus in on not necessarily how I was going to change the system in the libertarian way. I had to try to explain to the voters on how we were going to address their issues as a libertarian. And because I'm just there representing them, so I could have all these grand ideas, but if my ideas don't meet the district, then I won't be able to make it back. So we had a good group of people, a good group number of people. Sorry, didn't come out very well. Sorry. We had a number of people that didn't know the party or understand the party, and it was kind of a challenge, one, getting my name out there, because I was running against a 14-year incumbent, and he was really well liked and really well known. So I first off had to get my name out there as a challenge. And the second challenge was to try to help educate on the libertarian platform itself and how that differed between the two parties. So it did have a kind of a little bit of a unique challenge out there, but it also made it more interesting because we were able to get the party name out there and let people know that whether they were on the left or the right side, we still had a good answer for them on how we could resolve, or how we could address their issues. I was actually really well taken back when I found out that we had a lot of a lot of people that we've talked to knew about the Libertarian Party and actually supported the party. So once that kind of started getting out there more and more, and started getting people out there, when I won and stuff like that, a lot of it came out, and I still get it today. People just, they've always been libertarian, but they didn't have anybody to vote for. So, the messaging has been kind of complicated a little bit when you try to figure out how to send the same message on two different parties, trying to say two different things, but yet the same thing. So, great messaging team behind there, but it was a fun but a challenge at the same time. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, very much.
It's always tough, isn't it? When most people don't know what a libertarian is, they kind of project. and it's up to the candidate and his staff to, his campaigners to explain to them that, well, no, it's not really what, it's not really that, or yes, that's sort of it, but it's a little more complex than, you're not a Republican or a Democrat, and so that's kind of tricky. Ned Vaught again asks via Facebook Live, do you think any other legislators might consider switching to the LP? And would you welcome that, or would you prefer the LP contingent to grow through elections?
I would, thank you again for that question. I think as a Libertarian Party, if anybody hasn't really known, John Andrews out of Maine actually flipped from, the GOP party to the Libertarian Party shortly after the election came through, I think around the middle of December, maybe. So we did see that. And I think where we may be holding up, particularly in the state of Wyoming, I think some legislators are trying to figure out where I'm going to go with my legislative agenda and stuff like that. And I think when they come forward and they see where we're at and what we're trying to push, I think we'll get more legislators on board with the direction we're trying to go. And I do think that we do have a number of libertarian-minded legislators, but they may have some very tough and difficult races flipping the party if they don't run, their typical Republican or their typical Democrat ticket in their districts. So I do think we could see a large number of defectants from different parties that come into the party, and I'd be more than willing to welcome them in. I think that the party could definitely benefit from that. What I don't want to see happen though is someone from either the R or the D's come in, right on the coattails of the libertarian movement, what we have going on, and just say, well, now I'm a libertarian just because they might see a benefit to it. If someone's truly libertarian minded, I think we'd be able to find out, just through some research and stuff like that, and trying to figure out where their mindset's at. Questions, answers. If they are legislators, we can definitely look at their past voting history and kind of see where their liberty index is sitting at. But if they're true libertarians in mind, I think the party should reach out and definitely see what we can do to help them make the move and make that happen.
Do you all register by political party in Wyoming? So when you go to register to vote, are you a Libertarian or Republican or Democrat? Is that how?
We are, right.
Okay, so we do that in Nebraska as well. And what we found when I switched parties, got a lot of press about it in 2016. We found that a whole bunch of people decided that it was okay to be libertarian. Our registration numbers grew dramatically. So it'll be really exciting to see if you have that happen in Wyoming, have somebody track it for you, see what the registration numbers were like in, the 1st of November and what they are, the 1st of February.
Well, we are definitely tracking those numbers. It's something that we're not going to let go.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that we could see that change over as well and stuff like that. I think when people realize that it is possible to win as a third party, it does help make that move a little easier.
So Ashley asked in the chat, so what would your advice be to somebody, a libertarian out there somewhere in the country who wants to be a state representative 2 years from now?
I would say, thank you, Ashley, for the question. I would say get involved now. Get involved at your local process and up to your state. Understand how the process works. I had absolutely no idea how the process worked because I was never going to get involved in politics. I enjoyed studying it, right? So I never studied on how, on the campaign finance laws or, how the donation system set up and the constant, messaging and stuff like that. Things that I truly did not have a grasp because it wasn't anything that I really studied to make my move forward. It's definitely opened my eyes here in the last year and a half. So I would say if you're going to look for 2 years, And I would, I would also recommend reaching out to the national party. Obviously, the national party is trying to grow as well, and there's a huge level of resources that they have. They can get in touch with state parties and stuff like that, and then see what's going on. See how much involvement you have. See what the kind of test the waters if the libertarian idea could work in your particular area. Some areas just won't work, and some areas will. So start doing the research now, but you got to find all those little nuances that are out there within the campaigns and stuff like that. That like I said, I didn't know about. So I had a great team behind me that when I had to come up with filing my campaign contributions, my donations and stuff like that, there was somebody there that had already done that, so it was a fairly easy process. But it wasn't something that I realized I had to do right away. So those little things there could definitely bite you, not knowing about it. So strategy, and you're gonna have to have a good campaign manager to know how to work the processes and the systems and stuff like that. I don't know if he's gonna want me to tell you or not. He'll probably get mad maybe, but part of the strategy we had here in order to be able to kind of help control the narrative on how many people we had running in my particular race is we were predominantly a heavy Republican district, but we had a Democrat sit in office for 14 years. So Apollo looked at this as a huge win for the libertarian movement because we could pick up a lot of disenfranchised voters. So he studied a lot of this stuff like that. So even strategy becomes a huge factor in it. We didn't actually announce my candidacy, even though I was in the back trying to raise money and donations. I didn't actually announce my candidacy until after the required state filing for the two major, for the major parties. So what we did there is we wanted to see who was actually going to file, and then we would know if that was going to be a 2-party or a 3-party race, and that would change the view on how things worked out. So having a huge huge feather in the back with a campaign manager that knows those little things like that would definitely help keep your campaign strategic. I would say that's probably the biggest, is having a good campaign manager that knows the numbers and wants that data and pushes that towards the campaign.
So here's a question that you'll probably be better able to answer in a couple of months after you've had your full session, but we can just talk about it a little bit. Michael asks, how do you decide which battles to fight and which ones to fold on in relation to your own personal priorities as a libertarian? He's a newly appointed member of his municipality's budget review board. And as he's digging in, learning more about city finances, he's astonished at how much is spent on various pet projects, which he finds difficult to justify. And so, I think he's trying to ask, how do you decide when to fight the battle?
I think we always fight the battle. That's what the voters that's what the voters put me there for. But it's challenging because, I could get, if I push too hard, I guess I could see, leadership. I could see a pushback from leadership, and all my bills could get tabled into the conferences and not even see the floor itself. So it's kind of one of those. It's kind of it's a juggling effort. What I'm trying to do now is build some friends in the legislative bodies, both on both chambers and stuff like that. So if my bills do get desked by committee, there is a process and a rules that allow me to request my bill to be seen on the floor, but I do have to have a number of representatives back me up with that. So the bills that we're pushing is where we're trying to build those relationships and those friends. So when I need to, if it comes to it, I can possibly try to lean on them and try to get my bills, forced to the floor. But again, on the other hand of that, though, being the only libertarian and everything, going against the system on both parties, possibly, I got to make sure I don't put myself in the proverbial political closet to where I'm just sitting there for 2 years and nobody hears anything I have to say, and then I become ineffective. And then essentially the voters in my district don't have a voice in the floor, and they would be the ones that would hurt. So it's a juggling effort, but building some bonds and some friendships now, I think will carry us forward.
Well, excellent. So what, obviously I think there was some reason that the Frontier Project looked at Wyoming and chose to put their efforts there. Tell us a little bit about, it's a very large state with a relatively, about 500,000 people scattered out over a big area with a lot of small towns. Is there something about Wyoming that made it more receptive to libertarian ideas? Is there a kind of, people have this picture of rugged individualism out in the Mountain West. What are your thoughts on that?
So with Wyoming, you are correct. We are a fairly large state for land wise, but we only have about 560,000 people total. So we are very spread out within our districts and stuff like that. But a lot of people come to Wyoming for just the wide openness and just to come and kind of get away from the big city life and just go out. And when you drive 10 minutes out of town, you shut your vehicle off and you hear nothing. It's peace and it's quiet, and it's just the freedoms and stuff like that. So here in Wyoming, we truly believe in just being able to help our neighbors, just kind of be able to protect ourselves at the at the basic level. We don't believe we need to have a lot of government involvement with what we do, but over the years and stuff like that, bigger and bigger government has of course grown and grown and grown and start to overstep all that. So we are starting to get a lot of pushback from the constituents here we have in the various districts on letting the government know that we are tired of the overreach and being told what to do. So I think it's that is that ruggedness out there. Our mascot is a cowboy for the cowboy state and stuff like that. So they do believe in a lot of history and tradition and stuff like that. And I think where just that openness and that freedom and stuff is really easy to talk to and to speak to when we look at trying to limit government's involvement with our everyday lives and stuff like that. So I think that does help out with our messaging.
Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes. We're going to try to be respectful of Representative Burt's time tonight. So we're going to ask some quick questions. If you've got questions that you want answered, get those in the chat here quickly, and we'll try to keep them fairly short. So Daryl Perry, who ran for governor in New Hampshire, he asks, is it true that Wyoming has more cattle than people?
Probably.
You haven't counted them all.
I haven't done a recent cattle update, so I would have to assume that we are. It's a cattle state, so I'd have to guess so.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, about what percentage of Wyoming is made up of federal property or federal lands?
Roughly, if we don't count in the tribal lands, we're probably looking at roughly 48% of the state is owned by federal. When you bring in the reservations, we're probably closer to 60%.
Okay. Holly Ward asks, how can individuals help you? Do you have to be local? Do you have a place that, you want campaign money sent for the next round?
Always have campaign money is always helpful. So I do have a Burt for Liberty. That's it's kind of a twofold. It was the original candidate page, but we've moved that over to it also has constituents in there. So if anybody has request in there, there's an ability there, but there is a donate button in there. So you can donate directly through Burt for Liberty, and then also through the Frontier Project. They got donations through there, which helps other candidates that we're looking at trying to prosper. The national level always has a way to bring money in. Sweetwater County Libertarian Party, they can accept donations from the county party. Fremont County has a way out there if you're in that particular area to receive money there as well. So directly And then, you know, not so much indirectly, but within the state, there's a lot of ways to get that in there. So.
And what are your campaign finance laws like? Does it have to, can it be anybody from any place?
It can be anybody from any place. There is an individual cap of $1,500 per campaign year. So if it's $100 now and $1,000, you know, down the road, if it's a multiple, even if it's a monthly donation, there's ability to do a one-time donation or a monthly donation. And you just kind of have to be careful. If you want to do a $500 monthly, obviously you're going to go over that cap. So $1,500 individual, and then if you donate to a party, you can earmark that. So if you want to donate to the Frontier Project, to send that to me, or one of the county parties, such as our Sweetwater County Libertarian Party, then that county party can get it earmarked to me as well. So then there's no cap at the county party or the state party level.
Daryl is obviously a political junkie. He asks, you know, what are the Wyoming House rules on how legislation proceeds? In other words, in some states, bills can sit in committee without action, whereas in New Hampshire, all bills have a committee hearing and floor vote. In Nebraska, all bills get a hearing. They don't all get a floor vote, you know, so you have some variation. And then the second part of his question is there a legislative filing period, or can bills be filed at any time?
So there is so all bills will get heard within a committee, and it is up to the committee whether the committee actually passes it out of committee or if it dies in committee. So there is that first step process in there, and then the bills that pass committee, they will actually go to the House floor. So the way it works here is it has to be read 3 times on the House floor, and then if it passes those 3 times at the House level, then it goes to the Senate, and then the Senate has a sister committee. For each committee, there's 2, one for the House, one for the Senate. So if we pass a bill out of the Transportation Committee, it'll go to the House floor, it gets read, it comes back with any amendments. And then if the committee passes it again, then it goes back to the House floor, and then it goes back to the House again. So it's kind of a back and forth, and we do that 3 times. And after the 3rd time, if it passes the House, then it goes on to the Senate. And then the Senate does that back and forth, Senate floor committee, Senate floor committee, 3 times back and forth. And if it passes that, then it moves on to the governor's signature. If a bill hits from the Senate back to the House and it changes, then we have to form a different committee in order to review that, try to figure out if we can find a balance between, you know, the language between both chambers. And as I was talking earlier, if I have a personal bill, but leadership is trying to hold me back and it stays in committee, if I have enough support, I could request my bill to be removed from the committee's desk and then be put on the speaker's desk for a formal vote. So there is still a process, even if it doesn't leave committee. There is a rule set in place that we can actually try to force the hand if we think we have enough support for that. And then on that second part of that question is there are timeframes and limits. The House has unlimited bills that we can submit, whereas the Senate, they're limited in how many bills they can put, or how many bills they can request. And then it's our 5th day into a session that we is our deadlines before we can't file anymore.
Great. Andy, did you want to take some, or you want me to?
Well, I was just going to ask, you know, real quick while we're on that kind of topic at the legislature and its structure and stuff. How many members are there in each of your 2 houses there? How many folks do you gather on the floor with, 1 out of how many?
So we have 90 total. We have 60 on the representative side, and then we have 30 senators.
Excellent.
So Ashley asks, I don't think we've addressed this one. What's the best advice you can give to someone who might want to be elected as a state representative 2 years from now?
We do. I asked him that.
Did you ask that? Did I see? I'm going in order. And
find a great campaign manager, but
okay.
It's a great one to repeat. But find a great campaign manager and hit it hard.
Okay. What else do we have here that you haven't asked already while I was doing something else, Andy?
Well, I guess kind of a question is, where do you see the party going in Wyoming moving forward? Obviously, we're going to have another election coming up here in a couple of years. You've talked about presumably running for re-election. I know there's candidates who came close, like Bethany out in Riverton. Do you think the next election cycle or two you could see a growing Libertarian caucus in the state legislature?
I do think we can see a growth. Like I said, I think, going back to, earlier in the, before we started, as we started off this one, I think a lot of legislators are trying to figure out what am I going to do? How am I going to move forward and stuff like that? And when they realize that we're not going to come out all, with the fanatical type legislative ideas, I think that will actually start to appeal to a lot more of the liberty-minded, two parties, whichever, whoever those are within those different parties that might actually come on board. Huge shout out to Bethany Valdez, who ran, her second campaign this year, but for 2020, but her first run, kind of set the standard and the precedence of where, we started to grow, the candidates and got me on board. So with her involvement in the Frontier Project's involvement and everybody else's involvement at the county parties, I do think we can see more candidates and more involvement. I think, don't quote me, I think we've increased our county parties just within the state of Wyoming. And I know that the state is looking at trying to increase that even more. So there's movement going on. It does take a while trying to get people to kind of change their thought process in politics, and politics being polarizing just to start off with is kind of a sore subject when you talk to certain people and kind of their beliefs and stuff like that. But I do believe proper messaging and solid legislative bills that actually try to help protect people's rights and stuff like that, I think will actually make a good message, and I do see the party growing.
Okay, so we've got time for about one more question. Sherry asks, is your win attracting other potential candidates who now think they could win as a Libertarian? Have you had anybody contact you either in Wyoming or elsewhere asking for advice?
I've come there's been a lot of messages from all across the countryside. Texas has a huge push in their particular area. And I try to stay away from those because I don't know their politics within the particular areas in their districts and stuff like that. But I have received a lot of messages from across the countryside of people trying to figure out how they can change their messaging from a previous campaign to something in the future and stuff like that. Again, without knowing their internal politics, or I really don't want to be on their campaign staff. I've tried to keep from the inner, the deep specific portion of it, but I try to give them, from my point of view, what it took for me to go from somebody who's never ran a political race anywhere for anything to now being a state representative. And I just keeping that open, I think, is a good level of communication as well. It shows people that it is possible to win. Maybe change their viewpoint just a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Representative, we want to thank you for being with us tonight. For those of you who are watching and joined us tonight, just a reminder that if you want to support Representative Burt directly, you can go to burtforliberty.com/donate. And if you want to support the Libertarian Frontier Project, you can go to libertarianfrontier.com/donate. So be sure to do that. These are both big things for us in the future. For those of you who haven't paid much attention to the Libertarian Pragmatist Caucus, we plan on doing one of these about once a month. Over the next 6 months to a year at least. We want to bring on people from all walks of life who are sitting in elected or appointed office, and just have a conversation, and to bring more more knowledge to the rest of the party, so that they know what to expect when they get into office. So again, thank you, Representative Burt. Thank you, Andy, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Andy, and thank you everybody else for allowing me to be here and kind of chit chat and kind of ramble on a lot. Haven't had a whole lot of answers because we're just kind of new to everything. But I would definitely enjoy coming back after March when our session ends over and kind of fill everybody in where we're at, at that point in time. So
That would be great. We'll look forward to having you.
thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.